What is up, everybody? It's Lawrence again. The Pegasus 35 is in its 35th iteration of the Pegasus line. The Pegasus is really known for a really stable running shoe. Before we begin, I would really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button below and the thumbs up if you thought the video was awesome. But the Pegasus 35 Turbo released yesterday, an early release for Nike Plus members. And today I actually received them. They decided to overnight anyone that was able to order it to punch up the turbo factor of how quickly you'd be able to get these shoes. But without further ado, let's get into the review. Here is the Pegasus 35 Turbo. So let's start with the upper. The upper is composed of a translucent mesh. The translucent mesh color is called Barely Gray. In my opinion, it doesn't really look gray in person. No matter what light I look at it, it's almost like a minty green, like a grayish minty green. So it's really kind of cool, and you can see the flywire cables that are throughout, and then you can see that there are speckles of basically lines all throughout the upper that are really small. The other biggest thing that you can see here is obviously the hot punch Nike swoosh that runs into the midsole. The midsole is actually painted really poorly, so if you kind of look at it here, you can see that there are paint marks that don't necessarily go with the shoe or the Nike swoosh. On the bottom over here, you're going to see ZoomX, and ZoomX is something we'll definitely be talking about in a second. Going to the medial side of the shoe, it's a less pronounced Nike swoosh that is over here, and you'll see the fast symbol and the specifications for runners on the bottom left on the medial side. Going to the top of the shoe, you're going to see a very prominent stripe over here that runs into the tongue, and then the tongue has different symbols inside of it, and that includes the Nike symbol here. It says Nike Pegasus 35 Turbo, as well as a racetrack and the Nike pinwheel made out of Nike swoosh. Going to the back, you will see that the ZoomX as well as a React come together very similar to the Vapor Street and several of the other shoes. In addition to that, you will see a 3M hit down the middle with fused material right in the middle there as well. Moving to the inside of the shoe, you're going to have a padded collar over here, which is good for support, and then finally a detached tongue. On the inside, you're going to see Nike running, and it's done in that hot punch color for the insole. On the bottom of the sole, on the outsole, you're going to see something that's very similar to the Flyknit trainers that you'll see on the market, so that's kind of cool from that regard. Finally, I'm saving the best for last, which is the midsole. So why this specific shoe is turbo is because it's the first time that ZoomX is being used on a consistent runner that is not made for marathons. This is important for multiple reasons. There are a couple other shoes that have the ZoomX. The first one is the Vaporfly Elite, which I believe only released to marathon runners that were running the Breaking 2 campaign. Then there was a Vaporfly 4%, which was released to consumers in very limited number of quantity. That itself had a carbon fiber plate in it, and that carbon fiber plate was a shoe that I had absolutely loved to run in, but it was actually really hard to walk in because it kept propelling you forward with that carbon plate. But extremely comfortable shoe, but the upper really wasn't that great. And this is going to be your first consumer version of the ZoomX cushioning. So what characterizes ZoomX? ZoomX is very soft. So I would say that compared to React, which is the other kind of foam cushioning that Nike has released this year, it's much softer than React, and you can see that through here. So I did a quick 3-mile run in the shoe, completely and utterly creased over here, and it's not looking good already. There's a very stark striation between the top of the midsole and the bottom of the midsole, and that's because the top is actually done with a cushion of React for probably longevity purposes, and then the bottom is done with the ZoomX. So looking at the Vapor Street, just in comparison, I've worn these for probably 4 to 5 months at this point, and the creasing is pretty minimal on the shoe if you look at it closely. And this is what the Pegasus 35 already looks like after a 3-mile run. So not the best in the world in terms of creasing, but I don't really care that much about it. Other people do. And so React is definitely the firmer cushioning for foam, and then the bottom ZoomX is definitely more squishy. I'd say ZoomX is a better version of Boost if I had to put it into words. But the problem with that is you come with stability issues when you're running and things like that, and so it's a give and take. But I'd say ZoomX, in my opinion, is definitely better than Boost. What I absolutely love about the shoe from an aesthetic perspective is the middle area with the racing stripe that goes from the tongue of the shoe all the way down to the midfoot on the bottom over here. The reason why I love it is because it really reminds me of vintage Mustangs and the paint jobs that go into those. So I'm not a huge fan of the color, and hopefully they'll be releasing other versions of the color in the near future, which I assume they will. I assume this is going to be a general release model, unlike the 4%. The other thing about the shoe from a comfort level perspective is I don't love the upper. It's not as breathable as I thought it would be, despite the fact that it's translucent mesh. Nike has much better technologies from an upper perspective, whether it's fly knit or even some of that plastic material that you'll see in the Zoom Fly. I really wish they did a better job here. The Flywire cables don't hold in my foot as much as the normal other shoes do with fly knit, as well as Flywire. I'd say that from a running perspective, it was actually really, really good, but only when I pushed it. When I was trying to do kind of regular jogging, I didn't really feel the React or the ZoomX do very much for me. So it was interesting in that, like, I had to run hard for it to really get much out of it. I don't feel the same way with the React, and I definitely don't feel the same way with Boost. And those kind of react at a much kind of lower threshold. Just from a walking around perspective, these are actually too soft for me. It's one of the reasons why I don't like Boost, is because of how soft the material is. So similarly, the ZoomX makes the shoe really, really soft. I don't feel that way about React. React has a much firmer feel to it, and I do love React. And so this is basically a hybrid of the both, and the ZoomX makes it a little too soft, but it's not bad. It's definitely still extremely comfortable, and if you like the Boost feel, I think this is Boost, but better. From a sizing perspective, it should be super simple. If you want a looser fit, go true to size. These will not run long. It runs actually pretty true to size from a length perspective. But for me, whenever I run, I kind of like my shoes to have a much more tight fit to them. And so while true to size definitely fits me, I would actually probably go half size down. And the reason I want to go half size down is because as I'm running, I want my foot to be clamped down, and I just don't feel that. This upper is actually pretty flexible, and the clamp down of the Flywire isn't as substantial as I thought it would be, so that midfoot still moves around, and so does my forefoot when I'm running around, as well as walking, especially when I'm walking. So that's something that I would probably do is get a half size down for myself. But if you want a comfortable fit, I would say true to size is more than fine. From a weight perspective, these are extremely, extremely light. I don't know the exact weight of it, but I can't tell the difference anymore between how light these shoes are. I mean, if you look at the Vapor Streets, the React, and all those types of shoes from Nike, just absolutely phenomenal in terms of weight. You will not have a problem with weight in any way, shape, or form. And one of the last things in terms of durability, that's always one of the questions with foam technology. Unlike a lot of what Adidas does with the Ultra Boost and other Boost products, where they typically put an entire web of rubber on the bottom, Nike basically leaves a lot of their foam exposed. And so looking at this, the outsole of this is pretty sturdy. There's a lot of rubber all along the entire edge of the bottom of the shoe and the outsole, but only these black nibs are where there's actually rubber. So while this looks like there is rubber here, this is actually directly ZoomX, and I don't know how well that's going to hold. From what I remember from my last pair of 4%, the ZoomX basically shredded off pretty easily. The Reacts that I have are actually doing pretty well, so I'm not too worried yet. I'm sure Nike has tested this out, and I hold it true to them to make it work well. But hopefully that extends well. And that's it, guys. This is the Pegasus 35 Turbo, done in the Barely Gray, Hot Punch, and Black colorway.